بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The main focus tonight will be to revitalize our Iman and some of the promises that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out inside the Qur'an or sent down upon the blessed tongue of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And even before I begin, the verses that we heard tonight will become a basis to help us to understand وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Don't ever perceive or understand or have the thought that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unaware of what the oppressors or the oppressing people, what they do. Because this is the whole element of weakness that we find, that sometimes da'ful iman, weakness of iman, weakness of conviction, weakness of the end result leads that, as they say, we begin to take the law into our own hands, we begin to fret, despair, get over-worried. And becoming over-worried opens up avenues of weaknesses in our belief, in our actions, in our statements. But the more stronger the faith of an individual is, whether the goodness comes inside this dunya or comes later on, the Muslim perseveres in that journey. Even though the Muslim, or even indeed before that the human being, bitabatihi, via the natural feeling, needs to be given what's known as bushra, needs to be given glad tidings, that encouragement that you're on the right path. So the Qur'an follows that sunnah as well, to encourage people that there are good things inside this dunya and more so inside the akhirah. أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Indeed, the allies, the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no fear or no grief upon those individuals. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. This becomes a criteria of how to judge who are the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First you find those who believe and those who have piety towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi mentioned that every muttaqi fahuwa waliyullah. Every person who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sticks to the halal, avoids the haram, in a nutshell, becomes a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no special garment or special dress or special wird or special adhkar. Person who sticks to the halal, avoids the haram, will eventually become closer and closer to become a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about these individuals, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. There's no fear and no grief upon these individuals. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا والآخرة. There's going to be for them bushra, glad tidings in this world and more so inside the akhirah. لا تبديل لكلمات الله. There's no change in the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, that is the most manifest success. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sunnat Allahi ala al-ard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lays down certain sunan upon this earth, that if you do certain actions, there will be at times reward given inside this dunya, symbols, signs will be given upon this dunya, that a person is following the right path. And that's what we need to do at times, to revitalize that al-huda, the whole theme, the guidance, that we shouldn't feel weak about the guidance that we are upon. Thus we find another prophetic tradition that al-iman is like a thobe, is like a garment. It withers away, it tears away. You need to repair it. So that's what iman is. It needs to be revitalized. Your iman, every so often, we have to revitalize our iman, strengthen our iman, especially we're surrounded by so many doubts, shubuhat, doubts regarding our belief. Likewise, find shahwat, desires, temptations make people drift away. So we have to refresh our iman, to remind ourselves that there is something good about Islam, and there will be a good ending for the Muslim, and there will be beyond that an ultimate success for Islam. And for every single Muslim, whatever type of Muslim the person may be, it is our belief that all Muslims will eventually go to paradise. The only difference lies in trying to find the quickest path. That's all the whole debate is. No one can say this person is in paradise and this person is in the hellfire. No one can do that. That is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what a person can do on this earth is try to find the quickest and the swiftest and what seems to be the most appropriate path. That's what every Muslim should be searching for. Yes, at the end, every Muslim will go. Whoever testifies to wahdaniyah, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will enter into paradise. Whoever makes the kalima tayyibah, whoever makes the utterance of the sublime word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they die, leave this dunya, دخل الجنة من كان آخر كلامه لا إله إلا الله دخل الجنة. Whoever's final words are La ilaha illallah will enter into paradise. It's not something trivial. Do we ever recall anybody saying the kalima and leaving this dunya? It's a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes ithbat, makes steadfast, makes affirm those individuals who believe with قول ثابت. Imam Sa'di in his tafsir, he mentions قول ثابت وقول لا إله إلا الله, to understand this statement that none has the right to be worshipped except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have knowledge regarding this. This is where as Muslims begin to drift away. We have knowledge of many things. The ultimate knowledge is the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. The ultimate knowledge is the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah testifies that none has the right to be worshipped except for Him. And then the angels, and then men and women of knowledge, of understanding. This is the ultimate knowledge people need to seek inside their lives, is qurb ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And find that closeness, that proximity. No one should forsake another Muslim, down look upon another Muslim. Just recently is going around, a drunken Muslim entered into the masjid. So even the Imam found it repulsive, and they told him to pray in the back somewhere and make gaps between him, and then they offer their prayer. This is a drunkard. This was a Muslim inside the masjid. They made him pray in the back on the side so no one be close to him, maybe because of the odor, the smell coming from his mouth or from his clothing. They came for Salatul Maghrib. They began to offer their prayer. This individual, مَاتَ فِي سُجُودِهِ. This individual was inside sajda. The Imam got up to quickly take him out the masjid, walked over to him, waited for him. He didn't move. He nudged him. People gathered around. Give him some space, let him breathe. Maybe he just lost consciousness. فَمَاتَ فِي حَالَةِ السُّجُودِ. We wanted to throw him out the masjid. Not myself, but the Imam wanted to get him out of the masjid. تَصَوَّرُوا هَذَا. Imam wanted to pull him out the masjid. People wanted to leave the masjid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his life في حالة السجود. Allah took his life, a drunkard. No one knows ما كان في قلبي. No one knows why he entered the masjid. There was something inside his heart, something that was bothering him, that when he went down into sajda, he never woke up. Allah took his life, lifted him up to himself subhanahu wa ta'ala, and will judge him. This was a drunkard. So this is a lesson for many of us individuals, that we think that Muslims have no value, and we begin to give more value, excuse the expression, to non-Muslims around us. They have a value. They have a very good value that they have, but a Muslim is far more precious. As you find in certain athar, if the Kaaba was broken brick by brick, we know how people get emotional about standing in front of the Kaaba. فَهُوَ أَهْوَنِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ subhanahu. That means nothing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is broken brick by brick of the Kaaba. It's trivial, it doesn't mean anything. More precious to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a drop of a Muslim, a drop of blood. In some athar that we find, not a hadith, but some of the scholars have collected and mentioned this. The blood of a Muslim is more precious than the bricks or the wall of the Kaaba. And we know how we all get emotional about the Kaaba, how we have that love and that veneration towards the Kaaba. But do we feel like that towards another Muslim? Do we think inside our hearts that this is a Muslim? Damu halal wa malu haram wa ibdu haram. Muslim's life, blood, property is precious. Why? Because entered into Islam. That's why we have to revitalize our Iman and our Islam. Inna dina indallahi al-Islam. the way of life in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Islam. Because we find more and more, unfortunately, some Muslims try and doubt Islam is barbaric, Islam is medieval, Islam is for the 14th century, Islam is not adaptable to the modern world. Forget about non-Muslims, we know what they like to come with their rhetoric, but we find Muslims now sometimes writing articles saying certain things. Why do Muslims dress in this manner? Why do women still come in the streets like this? Make all these comments. Muslims. We have a simple thing to say to Muslims. We can understand non-Muslims. But as Muslims, especially people brought up in Muslim environments who studied Islam, this is what we always say to them. If you don't want to do a certain action of Islam, then don't look down upon it. You should defend Islam. Rather than come on the television and radio and say to people, well, for example, these women who wear the niqab, they're backward women, they're like this, they're like that. Muslims. Al-istihza'u bi-sunnati kufrun min nawaqid al-Islam. What takes you out the fold of Islam, as ulama have connected, is to make a joke. Is to make a joke about the sunnah, to make a joke about Islam, to make jokes about ummahat al-mu'mineen, about the mothers of the believers, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. If you don't decide to not cover your face, we don't have a problem with that. But for you to come and to say that this is a medieval practice, there's no interpretation from the Qur'an and the Sunnah, it doesn't exist. As a Muslim, Muslims should be wary to make such statements, because this is turath, this is legacy, this is heritage that goes back to classical works of fuqaha that we find that a person shouldn't begin to open the doors and begin to make what's known as this new form of tajaddudiyya, a new modernistic interpretation of Islam which suits the people around them. There's certain things Islam is very flexible. The way that we dress, what we eat, what we drink, etc. It says general qawaneen, general rules and regulations Islam tells us to follow. And then there's other rules and regulations which cannot change. Even over time, they remain there. The person needs to accept that. Person also shouldn't look at the wisdom to decipher Islam. More and more every day Muslims ask, or a Muslim asks, what is the wisdom behind doing something? They say, what is the wisdom behind not refraining from lahmul khinzir, the flesh of the swine, the carrion, the pig? What's the wisdom behind it? What's the wisdom in dressing like this? What's the wisdom in sitting down and urinating or eating or drinking? Muslims, what's the wisdom? What do you mean, what's the wisdom? وَقَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey. That's it. If the wisdom is discovered later on, نُورٌ عَلَى نُور. But the essence of a believer is, as the Qur'an says, وَقَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey. It's the way of those individuals, وَقَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَصَيْنَا. We hear and we disobey. That's what we become. We hear and we disobey. We know this is sunnah, this is what we need to do in our life. We disobey. Because Islam isn't based upon uqul, rationale. It's not based upon uqul, the rationale. If you use Islam to judge by your rationale, you will never ever understand Islam. You will never ever understand Islam. There are certain things which you can use rationalistic arguments to understand certain things. But the crux of most of Islam, it goes beyond the intellect. For example, in Sunan Abi Dawood that we find, you find mas'al al-khuf. You find wiping over your leather socks or over your socks. In aqlan, why does a person wipe over the top of their socks? That's what a person can pose the question. Why are you wiping over the top of your socks when what gets dirty is underneath your socks? Aqlan, that's what any normal intellectual person would say, but what? Shar'an. But according to Sharia, we've been told to do what? Wipe over the top. We've been told to wipe over the top. What do? We follow the Sharia. The Sharia tells us to do it, we do it. Like what you find when these people begin to read too much and it gets to their mind, hadith in Bukhari, if a fly drops inside your drink, then you should dip the fly down. Because in one wing is the disease and the other wing is the cure. Hadith in Bukhari. One of the ulama of hadith he rejected this hadith. قال أنه أقلا ما أفهم هذا الحديث. He said, my rational doesn't give me the ability to understand this. Deen isn't aql, because it wasn't discovered at that time. Now today, in the 21st century, it's been proven that if you drop a fly, or fly drops inside your drink, in one wing is the disease, the other wing is the cure. That's why you should dip it and take it out. But in Shaykh Uthaymeen rahmatullah mentions, you don't have to drink the drink. As somebody say, now it's gone inside, they take it out, you can drink it. No. You don't want to drink the drink, you don't have to drink it. Who said that? Don't have to drink the drink. Once again, it shows a lack of understanding of the deen. That now it's purified, you should drink it. If you don't want to drink it, you don't have to drink it. If you don't want to. So deen is not the rationale. It's the use of the nusus, the text, to understand what is taking place. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Whoever chooses another way of life other than Islam will be amongst the losing individuals. There's no Islam and socialism and communism and capitalism and the other 36 isms that exist. You can't combine the two together and say that I'm a Muslim and also I'm a socialist. I'm a Muslim and I'm like this. You can't bring the two together. There's only one way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever chooses another way other than Islam is in the same surah as Inna ad-Dina 'inda Allah Islam, inside Surah Al Imran, both there. That if you begin to move away from Islam, you'll be a losing individual, not just inside the akhirah, inside this dunya. You'll lose direction. This is one big thing that we find in the Muslim globe at the moment, direction. What is our direction? What are the texts that we use to give us inspiration, to give us direction? We can see it's quite visible. We don't need to mention places and locations and countries and what their protocol is, what their agenda is, what their belief system is, what their law system is based upon. It's quite open. It's quite open. In many of the 52, 53 odd Muslim countries, what their agenda is, what their belief is. Their foundation, unfortunately, is not the Qur'an and the Sunnah. It's a lip service, just like many of us. It's a lip service. When you really believe in Islam, then you strive for Islam. You work for Islam. You live for Islam. And this concept of various paths, they all come together, what's known as Abrahamic faiths. That they all come together and eventually lead to the one God. Kufr ala kufr. That's what it is. There's no concept that all paths come together and eventually you come to the one creator. There's only one path. وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِ مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. There's only one path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Follow that one path. That will lead you directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And don't follow the other subul, the other paths. Because they will divide you away, take you away. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. This is the wasiyah, the advice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, that you may become the pious individuals. Ibn Mas'ud, making tafsir of this ayah, he mentions the Prophet ﷺ, he drew a long line in the sand. And then he drew short other lines towards the edge of this long line. He said at the end of these short lines is nothing but the devil that's waiting there. And at the end of this long path is paradise. There is no shortcut to paradise. You know, people in Muslims think, is there a shortcut to paradise? There's no shortcut. It's a long, tedious, difficult path. It will take many, many years. And even then the person may be only given small glimpses inside this dunya and even inside the akhirah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite mercy will multiply what we may see as a long life, multiply that many, many times over in His infinite mercy and give us immense reward. Person will come on the Day of Judgment and see immense good that will be there. That is the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and will multiply it many, many times over. And that's why whoever calls to guidance, especially in the environment that we live in, if a non-Muslim enters into Islam, it's like a red she-camel. In today's language, like a red Ferrari. It's a prized commodity. He said to Ali that go out and call to the people. If a person responds to your call, your prize is like a red she-camel. So this is what we should be, du'at ila Allah, preachers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with Islam that we know, representing the true Islam, the orthodox Islam to the people around us. Because these people have strayed away. In a hadith that we find that a person hires some workers. They begin to work until half of the day. There's only half more to go, and the employer says to them, carry on. Half a day to go and you'll get your ajr given to you, like a person on a building site. And the person says to him, only half of the day to go. Most of the work you've done it, persevere and you get the reward. The person says, no, I've had enough. He hires a new group of workers. And they continue to do the work all the way till about Asr time, late afternoon. He says to them, look, there's not long to go. Persevere, and you'll have the earnings from the first group and your own salary be given to you. They give up, they walk away. A third group of individuals come and they complete the day. And they take all the ajr. The first group is the Jews. The second group is the Christians. The third group is the Muslims who take all the ajr. You know, people like to enjoy, may Allah forbid, the national lottery, don't they? They place you find people who are Muslims, and the more, even Yawm al-Jum'ah, you find Muslims in their Muslim dress, walking into the bookies, placing their bets and then going for Jummah. Before, it used people should consider. Now people pray the Jummah, go out and make their bets. If you want to make a bet, because that's what they say, what is the path to paradise? The Jews say, that we will go to paradise and no one else will go to paradise. The Christians say that we will only go to paradise, whoever believes in Jesus, but they reject the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As for Muslims, we'll always go to paradise. Because if Jews go to paradise, for example, we'll go with them, because we don't reject Musa or Isa, and we don't reject the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If the Christians go to paradise, because they did not reject Isa, they believe in Musa and Isa, but they rejected the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But if they manage to go to paradise, for example, then what will happen? We'll go with them. But if you Jews, you rejected Isa, and you rejected the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're not going to go to paradise. And likewise, you Christians, you may believe in Musa and Isa, but you don't believe in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will not go to paradise. So either way, we're always going to go to paradise. Muslims will always go to paradise. Muslims make no division amongst the Anbiya about the messengers, about their belief and what the message that they came with. So it's always a win-win situation for the Muslim to be at the end. Like when we find a Christian in the hadith, we find who accepts Islam has 2 rewards. For believing in Isa alayhi salam and believing in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 2 rewards will be given to that individual. That's what the Qur'an encourages these individuals when it speaks about Ahlul Kitab. تَرَى أَعْيُنُهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ مِمَّا عَرَفُوا مِنَ الْحَقِّ. You see that their eyes begin to shed tears, begin to weep because of the truth. There's good people amongst them. They need to be revitalize their iman, remind them about what the right iman, what the right belief is. So firstly, this concept of Abrahamic faith, even amongst Muslims that we find, it's a false concept. The Qur'an mentions وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ. Inside Surah Al-Ma'idah, the Qur'an stands as a testimony over everything, over the previous scriptures. Anything good, for example, people read the 10 Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, inside the Bible, other elements that you find, it's all extracted and placed where? Inside the Qur'an. It's all there. The Qur'an stands as a testimony over all previous scriptures and all other ways of life. Anything good in Judaism and Christianity has been taken out. So we follow certain elements that may still exist in Judaism today. For example, circumcision. Should we now abandon it because the Jews practice it? They're following the way of Musa alayhi salam. That's what they're doing. They're following the natural fitrah. So that's praiseworthy. It's praiseworthy that they're following the natural fitrah or other actions they may do that coincide with Islam. Because their foundation is Islam. Obviously they've deterred away. يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَمْ مَوَاضِعِهِ. They've changed the word from its right location, but the main lub, the main source is there. That's why you find resemblance inside these faiths. But the core of the lesson is extracted and placed inside Islam. That all goodness is inside Islam. And then any changes in the practices of the Anbiya is codified via the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He becomes the ultimate messenger. That he mentioned that even if Musa alayhi salam was to come, he would do what? He would follow my sunnah. He would follow the sharia given to me. So if Musa alayhi salam was to come back, placed in the time of the Prophet alayhi salam, he will not follow the Torah. He will not follow the Old Testament. He will follow the law which is given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus you find that the complete codifications at Surah Al-Ma'idah, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. This day have I perfected my favors upon you and chosen for you Islam as your way of life. Inside Surah Al-Ma'idah, the 5th chapter, verse number 3, there's one, this is the day of Eid. Umar ibn Khattab mentioned this is the day of celebration. Because the Jewish person said that if this verse was sent down to us, we would celebrate. This verse was sent down the day of Arafah and Yawm al-Jum'ah. So it is naturally becomes a day of Eid. Look at Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, certain ayat sent down as a form of rejoicing. That this day I have perfected my favors upon you and chosen for you Islam as your way of life. Blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person shouldn't begin to stray away. Yes, a person may sin inside their life, may get derailed in their life, but inside their heart and their mind should be the only way. That's why you find ridda, you find in Islam, apostasy is very rare. Does a Muslim give up their faith? It's always the opposite. People give up Christianity, Judaism, other ways of life, and then they come into Islam. But very rarely do you find in Islam that a person leaves Islam. We're not talking about Muslims sinning. Muslims will sin. That's normal. That is a problem, but not really such a problem in comparison to somebody giving up their faith and walking away from their faith. That's why we should be very, very careful at times, as we began with, to take Muslims outside the fold of Islam. When our hadith talk about whoever does this, sibab al-Muslim, kufr, cursing a Muslim is repulsive, and to kill him is a form of kufr, or whoever does this action has left the fold of Islam, or this person is like this, la yu'min, this person doesn't believe. Person shouldn't pluck those ahadith and apply them to people. Okay, no one should pluck a hadith and apply it to another person. Because even these ahadith and the talkers, ulama have dissected them, it carries the meaning when it talks about a Muslim, أَنَّهُ نَاقِصُ الْإِيمَانِ ضَعْفُ الْإِيمَانِ. The Muslim is a weak Muslim. It doesn't mean that the Muslim has left the fold of Islam. It's not something easy and simple that we just go along and we see that something doesn't fit into our mindset, that we go and we make bold statements. You know, I hear this day in and day out. Somebody doesn't agree with you, أنت منافق. You're a hypocrite. Ya akhi, kalimat thaqila. Heavy words. How can you say to another Muslim, Imam huwa munafiq kadhalik? Imam is a munafiq as well. The Imam said to vote inside this country. Huwa munafiq. Ya akhi, how can you make such kalimat? نوع من الاجتهاد. اجتهاد عنده. Ijtihad not just inside the Imam, ijtihad in the kibar ulama. Though you find certain things that they're given judgment about. And for you just to see things black and white and they say to another person, who munafiq. That is not befitting for a Muslim to treat or speak to another Muslim in this manner. Or the Muslim promised me something, he did not do it, he must be a hypocrite. Ya akhi, the hadith mentions ayatul munafiq thalath. Signs of a munafiq. Either bima'na istimrariya, continuously. Every time. Once in a while we could all make a promise, false to that promise, don't fulfill it, do something. That's we're human beings. But if it becomes habitual, that every time it's your nature, then the person can say there's some elements of nifaq in that individual. But first time it happens straight away, he's a munafiq, he's a hypocrite. No. Person should abstain, as we began with, from cursing and reviling another Muslim. If you want to help Muslims, udkhul fi qulubihim. Enter into their hearts and into their minds. That's what khair, goodness is. When you enter their hearts and their minds and remind them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you're doing this is not appropriate. And how many of our teachers took us by the hand? How many teachers took us by the hand and remind us about so many things, that it becomes inspirational for the rest of your life? Shaykh Hudayfi rahmatullah, is still alive, so at the moment you find. Abu Bakr Jazairi, famous Mufassir, still alive at the moment, even though he doesn't do tafsir in the Haram at the moment, but just a token service, somebody reads it. He used to pray all of his prayers inside Medina, in the Prophet's mosque. He lived far away, slightly far away, and he would not come for Salatul Fajr. He had a dream. In his dream, he saw the Prophet ﷺ. And obviously, whoever sees man ra'ani fil manam faqad ra'ani. Whoever sees me in a dream has seen me. That's why in Shama'il Muhammadiyya, written by Imam Tirmidhi, person who knows the Shama'il, knows the characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ, knows it's the messenger. He will never come and say, do haram, okay? Or leave the halal, or do this, or do certain actions, go against the Sharia. Abadan. He will never come with statements like this. That's when you know it's not the Prophet ﷺ. Inspiration will come. That when he comes, he will give people glad tidings, encourage them. He said, you come to all of the prayers. Why don't you come for Salatul Fajr to my masjid? He said after that day, he made sure that his driver, every single day, he comes for Fajr in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. The person who translated Sahih Bukhari, 9 volumes in English, Dr. Muhammad Muhsin Khan, is not a scholar, even though for us he's a scholar. He is a professional doctor by profession. What inspired him to make translation of Sahih Bukhari into the English language? Dream of the Prophet ﷺ said to him to scribe the hadith, translate the hadith. Said that's what inspired him. And sometimes he sits there in Medina, you wouldn't know he was, sometimes you find ulama, mashayikh, you find entourage, bodyguards and this and around them. People just sit there sometimes, speak to this old man and speak to him and ask him what's his name. Said, my name is Muhammad Muhsin Khan. Then people get taken aback when they hear that name. You're the one who translated Sahih Bukhari, the one who translated the noble Qur'an that most of us we read. Look at his blessing. Al-Ikhlas, as-sidq fi hayatihim. Sincerity, devotion inside the life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a benefit from them. Takes a benefit and uses them as utensils to create a benefit for Islam or the people around us that we find. So we find that this concept of Islam, following the path of Abrahamic faith, the Qur'an it mentions, Inna Ibrahim kana ummatan qanita lillahi hanifa. Ibrahim alayhi salam was an observant servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walam yakun min al-mushrikeen. Was never amongst the mushrikun. Shakiran li'an'umi. Ijtabahu wa hadahu ila sirati mustaqim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected him and chose him and guided him to the right path. and gave him goodness inside the world and inside the akhirah as well, then we've told you ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Then we've given you revelation to follow the millah, the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he was never amongst the mushrikun. That you find disputes take place. وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ لَيْسَتِ النَّصَارَ عَلَى شَيْءٍ وَقَالَتِ النَّصَارَ لَيْسَتِ الْيَهُودُ عَلَى شَيْءٍ وَهُمْ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ. The Jews say that the Christians don't have no foundation. The Christians say the Jews have no foundation. وَهُمْ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ. And guess what? Both of them recite the book. So they blame one another. You're on falsehood, you're on falsehood. There's no element of truth in their ways of life, as the Qur'an mentioned. There's no proof that this is the right path of life for a person to follow inside their lives. Till eventually the Qur'an mentioned, يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لِمَا تُحَاجُّونَ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمَا أُنزِلَتِ التَّوْرَاةُ وَالْإِنْجِيلُ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِهِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Why are you disputing about Ibrahim alayhi salam to say he's a Jew or a Christian? What's this dispute? The Jews are saying he was a Jew, Christians saying that he was a Christian. Qur'an says, why are you disputing about him? When the Torah and the Injil were sent down only when? After him. There was no Torah and no Injil. There may have been Suhuf of Ibrahim, as ulama mentioned, the scriptures given to Ibrahim. There was no Torah. There was no Old Testament. There was no New Testament. There was no Injil. There was no Bible. So how can you claim that he must have been a Jew? Or how can you claim he must have been a Christian? He would rather indeed, he was a Muslim, one who submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus we find after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, مَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا وَلَكِنْ كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Ibrahim alayhi salam was never a Jew, was never a Christian, but he was Hanifan. Hanif is one who purely in a pristine manner worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in oneness. That's what a Hanif is. He was not a Jew or a Christian. And that's why even Islam or Muslim, any person who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is classified as a Muslim. Certain times there may be a grey area where it's not so clear and the person will be given the opportunity. For example, you find in the Amazon jungle, the person used to worship the idols. And one day a dog came and urinated over his idol. So in his rage, in his anger, he came out chasing the dog away. Then he stopped and he began to think that if this idol is supposed to be my God, or supposed to be one that protects, and a dog has urinated over it and this idol does nothing, this is not a deity. That in itself is awakening. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. We'll show them our signs in the horizons, in the heavens and in the earth. And even the Qur'an mentions, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Even within your own selves, we'll show you. That's why a doctor by profession is a very good profession. But if you don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has no value in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because certain professions should make you closer to Allah. One profession, obviously you don't find it in this country very rarely, is a farmer. Is a farmer because very close to nature. Very close to nature, seeing the natural rain and natural substance. You find that they have a very strong faith. We may find them very petty peasants or whatever the language may be, but in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, very close. Their tawakkul, their reliance and their commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we live in a very cosmopolitan, metropolitan city at the moment, we don't see these signs. They're close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other individual that we can visualize, and some of us are such individuals, is a doctor. Because every day you deal with what? Life and death. You see it. But some of them, when they finish their profession, they go and get drunk. Come home, يَعْبُدُونَ الْأَصْنَامِ, worship idols, statues, atheists, rejection of God. This profession should lead you to reflect. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Even within your own self that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has structured the human being, don't you see to visualize this? These are all signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is what separation of religion and politics is. Deen becomes a personal relationship in a place of worship. Religion has no life in the wider world. Okay, this is what the crux of what communism is and what all these beliefs is in a general is a rejection of religion. Religion or secularism is a pride. That you find that according to these philosophers, that's why don't read too much philosophy, يُخَرِّبُ الْعَقْلِ, it wrecks the mind. Don't ask why I read it, because I'm already mental anyway, but I just read it for certain studies. Okay, these individuals, if you read Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud and all these individuals, they say religion begins with the death of God. Okay? They say religion is the opium of mankind. It's hashish, marijuana. They need something to keep them uplifted. Weak people need religion. Weak people need religion because they need to hold on to something. So now you can begin to understand why the Muslim world, why certain Muslims, that when our people are infused with this thought inside their mind, you can see why they begin to talk, how they talk about religious clerics. The highest profession is what? Is a religious cleric. That's the highest profession that should be in the heart and the mind of an individual. That's why you find that most ulama, they don't want their children to be ulama. That's a weakness. That's a weakness. Shouldn't be that, because this is the highest profession. Sahibul deen wal khuluq. Person of deen and character and behavior. Should be indoctrinated. We all want our children to be this, that, and the other profession. We all want that. But why don't we want? Because when I was growing, what would it be? Those who are the naughty individuals get sent to where? Darul Ulum, isn't it? Come out like me. Huh? Those are the elite individuals, go to Oxford, go to Cambridge, become elite individuals. وَمَا يَفْقَهُونَ شَيْءٍ. And don't understand anything. Don't understand anything. All becomes rhetoric. And guess what happens? Even the parents who brought them up, maktub. You know what they say about their parents when they're standing inside a gathering? A poor individual may come, broken English. The friends may ask, who's that individual? ما أعرفه. ما أعرف هذا الشخص. I don't know this individual. Take him out. وهو والدهم. He's who? Their father. Because he doesn't want to be seen that my father speaks broken English or he's dressed in this manner. Your father broke his back to get you your education. Your mother nurtured you to bring you up today. And today now, you think, because now you're elite. Your elite identity. You're a person who reached a high skill of education. This education is hujjatun alayk, is evidence against you. Against you. And likewise, it's Allah's evidence against you. Because the elite people, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Elite people, the Qur'an says, who have good deep understanding of knowledge, are those individuals who fear Allah. لَا يَتَكَبَّرُونَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Symbol, people always ask, what's the symbol of an alim? Doesn't become arrogant upon the people. يَعْمَلْ بِعِلْمِهِ. Person who's an alim works with their knowledge. وَثَمَرَةُ الْعِلْمِ هُوَ خَشْيَةُ اللَّهِ. And the fruits of al-ilm is the fear of Allah. That's you find Imam al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, he mentioned, لا يزال عالم جاهلا. A scholar is always ignorant حتى يعمل بما عمل or بما علم, until the person begins to carry out that which they've learned. If the person carries out what they learned in their life, then that person can be called a scholar. You know the side point, al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, he used to be a highway robber. Fudayl ibn Iyad used to be a highway robber, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him that he moved away from that and he became a star amongst the ulama. That's ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can select once again certain individuals, give them a deep understanding of the deen. Thus you find that the best thing that a person can be given is fiqh fi deen, is understanding of the deen. It's the best thing that a person will be given inside their life, is to be able to understand the nusus and the text. Because these are people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are people who would invite the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, showing the symbols, taking people, highlighting this is darkness or darknesses and this is the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this belief that we find will only be shown by those individuals who understand the nusus of the text in the Qur'an and Sunnah, to illuminate people that don't drift away in falling into the traps of the world around us, that every single path is the right path. And this isn't a dream as well. Islam isn't a dream. You know, some people say my dreams have been shattered and this and that. Islam is not a dream. Islam is a fact. It's a reality. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. At times it may seem to us, as we began with, that Islam looks weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described, these are only days that we alternate between you. That it looks in this manner that you think that Islam is downtrodden. But the Qur'an says, وَكَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلْيَا. The word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be lofty. The word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be lofty. وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. They plot and they plan, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the best of planners, like what we heard in recitation, that their plotting and their planning will do what? لِتَزُولَ مِنْهُ الْجِبَالِ, will move a mountain out of its place. Look how accurate the Qur'an is. They plot and plan so accurately, they'll move a mountain out of its location. They'll make you believe there never existed a mountain here. They'll make you believe that the Muslim is the one who done this. So they can move a mountain out of its location and prove to people it never existed in the first place. So it's very simple to prove to the world that, you know what? A Muslim blew up the building. And guess what? The passport survived. Strange, isn't it? Every time buildings get blown up, people get shredded to bits, but passports in their complete format, they survive. Because this is human nature. That's why you find that no matter how much of a good thief you are, you'll always leave something to get caught out. You'll always leave something because that's the nature of the human being. When you do, that's what al-ithmu ma haka fi nafsik. Sin is what exists inside your own soul, even though people may give you a religious verdict into your view. So a thief, by his nature, when a person steals, they'll be troublesome, they'll be worried, they'll leave something, do something which is abnormal, and they'll get caught out. And same thing here. These big thieves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expose them. You know, we don't say anything, but you'll be surprised the amount of non-Muslims, if you read the blogs and follow it on the amount of non-Muslims who openly say that what is taking place in the world at the moment is a great big fallacy to just set up the Muslims. Muslims are the ones who say, come out straight away, apologetic, grab their feet, beg them, forgive us, pardon us, this happened, that happened. Ya akhi, what happened? We don't know. Why are you begging for forgiveness for? But we have to show obedience. We have to show obedience because why? Slave mentality. We've been ruled for 150 years, it's indoctrinated within us. So every time we do something wrong, beg in front of the master, please forgive me for what somebody done. But guess what? We never done anything. We make ourselves look silly. So we need to begin to understand the world politics, the game around us takes place, that some of us are very shallow individuals. We're not saying go and do harm or whatever it may be. Yes, what is wrong is wrong. We believe what is wrong is wrong. If it's proven that Muslim or non-Muslim done acts of atrocity or terrorism or whatever it may be, we all condemn it. We all condemn it. There's nothing wrong. We all condemn it. We all agree that Sharia, the basis, the asas of the Sharia, is not allowed. Finish. There does not need to be a long debate, a long discussion about it. But what about the other things that take place on a daily basis? People, countries which are bombarded, people which are persecuted, which are oppressed. Do we then become so coming open in making statements? That's why when a number of ulama went to 10 Downing Street and they asked them, symbolic gesture, what do you think we should do if we went into Iraq? They said, it's going to cause a lot of problems against Muslims and this, that and the other. So one of the ulama, he said to them, your example is like the Chinese proverb. That at home, speak with your wife, consult your wife. But when you go out the door, do what you want to do. You are going to bomb Iraq. Don't call us here today and give a symbolic gathering that we call Muslims of this country, ulama of this country, and we ask them, you are going to bomb Iraq, no matter what we say. Because why? It's the agenda. It's the agenda that exists here. Things need to be created. The new bogeyman is Islam. That's what it is. The new wave is Islam. That Islam needs to be demonized to create certain things. Certain things to carry on in this world needs to be demonized. We fail to understand that. They'll try to demonize it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do what? Will illuminate it. Illuminate to such a level we can't seem to understand that after everything that's taken place, you find the amount of non-Muslims, especially in this country. Forget about America because it's as thick as 2 planks of wood, yeah? But that's another topic. Yeah, you can see their presidents, what type of presidents they produce. But in this country, people are very, very intelligent. And they see through many, many things. And they come into Islam. Because they see the beauty they see. Why? Because normal engagement of Muslims, if we behave as Muslims, live as Muslims, it will naturally attract people. If we go to the Christmas party and say, don't call me Muhammad, call me Mo, I don't really drink, but I'll sit here. Then what image are we giving? You listen to some of the radio stations, you get quite marveled. A white woman comes on the radio and says, these Muslim sisters, can they make up their mind? You're wearing hijab and full makeup on your face. I'm sure that's not modesty. That's a non-Muslim woman saying, this is not modesty. Because the hijab is a symbol of modesty. So they're telling us our deen. How many of us see Muslim boys in a bad state, non-Muslim going past and saying to them, haram, your drinking is haram. You know, they know. Don't think they don't know. They know what Islam is. They know that it's forbidden. Because why? The essence of our parents who came here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We may find them cultural, but there's certain things they've never done in their life. There's certain things they never ever done in their life that became very symbolic. That's what the people said to them, that you are very honest and truthful people. What do you want from us? They said, I want to call my wife over, I want to call my family members over, I want to read the history of the Muslims in France, inside Germany, inside this country. So they gave them visas for their family members, their brothers and sisters, family members to come in, because they saw certain symbols that these people don't do. And munkarat, don't do al-fawahish, don't do this bad behavior. They want to preserve themselves, they're good, honest people. So then we find the most individuals, yes, we may pray and we fast, and then where's our level of honesty? Lie to the kuffar. What do you mean lie to the kuffar? What deen is this? Take their wealth, take their property, do this? No. A Muslim is on their covenant, on their word, on their authenticity. This is what makes a Muslim shine out. That's why one of the Imams who was traveling on the bus, and the bus conductor gave him some extra change, and he began to think in his mind, he's giving me extra change, what should I do with this? Like many of us just think, no problem, only 50p, £1, buy myself an ice cream. He's about to get off the bus, hands him over the money. He says to him, I just wanted to see what you was going to do. Don't sell your deen for a bowl of rice. That's what most people, they're on the side. They want to see what we're going to do, how we're going to behave, how we react, what type of people that we are. Is it just another textbook symbol, or are we living by the text? And when we live by the text, they begin to respect you. They begin to respect you, begin to understand these people are true people of their faith and their conviction. And likewise, we find that Islam will become something which is strange. Badal Islamu ghariban wa sayaudu ghariban. Islam began as something strange and returned back as something strange. In front of the average non-Muslims, Islam is something strange. The way we pray, what we do, in general is strange for them. And unfortunately, amongst Muslims, you find that it's strange amongst some Muslims. Person who practices their deen, people look at them strangely. Or person holds fast to the sunnah, they look at them even more strange, isn't it? Sunnah becomes bid'ah, bid'ah becomes sunnah, and we find all these slogans, these titles that begin to take place. He's become a Wahhabi. What is a Wahhabi? This is what happens. Why? Because it becomes strange. Everything becomes murky. So you need symbols of guidance to remind and sift out what is the right path. That yes, there will be strangeness, but it's also the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's we find, we began with the Bushra. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laid out certain prophecies inside the Qur'an. For example, Surah Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, Alif Lam Mim, Ghulibatir Rum. Indeed, the Romans have been conquered by the Persians, and then again, you find that in the Persians were conquered by the Romans. So we find that the Muslims were rejoicing, because obviously via affiliation, as we've been mentioning in discussion, Muslims are closer to Ahlul Kitab than the Persians, who were the fire worshippers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned them, they will begin to rejoice on that day, and there will be that is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before and afterwards. وَعْدَ اللَّهِ لَا يُخْلِفُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. That is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most people don't know about the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are prophecies inside the Qur'an. This ayah was sent down before it actually took place. So then it took place. That's what we're trying to extract here. That there's prophecies inside the Qur'an, and likewise in the Sunnah, of certain things that will take place that make us to revitalize our Iman. There's a certain prophecy which mentioned in general 3 places inside the Qur'an talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. Twice it occurs, even though the mushrikun may despise it, inside Surah As-Saff that we find inside, and also inside Surah At-Tawbah that we find. And in another place inside the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His messenger with the right guidance and the truth, that it may prevail over all other ways of life. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient to be a witness over this. So this is a promise. Now a person might say inshallah. You don't need to say that. Because inshallah is various formats. There's various formats of inshallah according to the Arabic language. There's our format that we find in general, ghadan, bukra, inshallah, nashuf ghadan. You know what that is in the Arab world, isn't it? Ghadan never comes. It never comes. This inshallah is tahqiqan. It's a fact. It's not one that you have to say, if Allah wills, it will happen. It will happen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His messenger to prevail over all other ways of life, to be dominant and to become the main dominant force. Islam is a force which is based upon ordering the good and forbidding the evil. That's what Islam is. Islam is not a personal relationship. We can't shy away from the fact. Islam is ordering the good and forbidding the evil. وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ, and believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why I find these 2 pages Surah Al-Imran, not mistaken, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions ordering the good and forbidding the evil 3 times. Twice about the Muslims, and in the 3rd time towards the end of the page talking about the people of the book. That they order the good and they forbid the evil. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again says Surah At-Tawbah that we find talks about the believers are those individuals who order the good and forbid the evil. The hypocrites and those who don't believe are those who order the evil and forbid the good. That's their sifat, that's their characteristics. So Islam rests upon that in encouraging people to do the good and to avoid the evil. Then the strange thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before these ayat, mentions يُرِيدُونَ لِيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ. They want to blow out the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their mouths. And that's how strange it is. Look at the way the Qur'an, it directs certain language. Before it mentions that they want to blow out the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the light of Islam, the light of the Qur'an, want to blow it out. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will complete that light. Will complete that light on this earth. It may take certain stages or certain times we mentioned, but the end result, it will always be something in which is complete. As for some ahadith, one of them we mentioned, بَدَى الْإِسْلَامُ غَرِيبًا وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا فَطُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَاءِ. طُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَاء. What is طُوبَى? طُوبَى ulama mentioned is أَمَّا الشَّجَرَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ, is either a tree in paradise or حَظٌ كَثِير, immense richness and goodness will be given to those individuals. Then a description is given to al-ghuraba. Man al-ghuraba? Who are the strange individuals? It mentions unasun salihun yuslihu ma afsadu nas. Al-ghuraba, strangers, are those individuals who rectify what people have corrupted. They rectify what people have. They are unasun salihun, righteous people living amongst people who've corrupted so many things. So they're trying to bring that back once again. That's what these righteous individuals are. So that's a symbol of al-ghuraba, that people find them as strange individuals, but they're trying to rectify society and remind society to come back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will complete this affair حَتَّى يَسِيرُ الرَّاكِبُ مِنْ صَنْعَى إِلَى حَضْرَمَوْتِ. That a traveller travels from these 2 cities in Yemen, from Sana'a ila Hadramaut, and doesn't fear anything except for the wolf that may attack the sheep, a natural fear, and fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only alone, and may fear that the wolf may attack one's sheep. Here ulama of hadith mention, why did the Prophet ﷺ mention Sana'a and Hadramaut? Even today that you find the truth about these 2 cities, these are ruthless cities. Because they were highway robbers and people would rob you and steal from you. So a time will come, there will be peace. That you'll be able to travel between these 2 cities and you will not fear anything. A time will come that Islam will be dominant, create peace and tranquility upon this earth. And even you study in great detail historically that you find whenever Islam was dominant, it gave peace to everybody. You know, it's quite strange that when we Muslims were controlling Palestine, there was no harm. There was no harm that took place there under the protection of Muslims. In Al-Maghrib that we find, the Spanish Inquisition, the Jews that they fled, they came under the protection of who? Amongst Muslims. When Muslims ruled over Al-Hind, over this current day India, what was there? There was peace, there was tranquility. And so even in Palestine that we find that the Christians at that time, they said that we want to be under the rule of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. They said, take us underneath your rule. And you know Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, you read his seerah, you know King Richard II, you go to Westminster, you see the person on the horse. Anybody seen that statue? That's supposed to be King Richard Lionheart. He's the man who fought who? Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Strange thing is they never met face to face. They never met face to face. But Salahuddin al-Ayyubi sent him fruits on ice. Sent him fruits on ice and said, you know, fatten yourself up, get ready to meet me, because I'm a warrior of a different nature. He sent his own doctor to go and treat him. Get him ready, let him come into the battlefield. That's what Salahuddin al-Ayyubi was. They wrote about him. If you read history, they write about this individual was a strange man. This individual was a strange man. The way he conducted himself. You know, everything about us is unique. Don't think in a rage of warfare that we become tyrannical, we become, the beastly, like what these people, what they choose, what they go and do. That's not what Islam is. That's you find that Mukhtar, the famous liberator of Libya that we find when he faced the Italians and they captured 2 Italian prisoners. And the friends around him said that we should execute them to teach the kuffar a lesson. You know what he said? He said, they're not our teachers. They're not our teachers. We don't do what they do. And they're not our teachers to teach us what we are. Our teacher is who? The Prophet ﷺ. He's our teacher. He's our teacher. So we don't get even emotional in certain state of warfare. We codify ourselves according to what the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us and what he told us to do. So he's our teacher. He's our benchmark. So you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will complete this affair. Another hadith that we find becomes dominant today. Islam will enter into every single home. Whether it be a complete home, a mud home, a shelter home, it will enter into every single home. And guess what? That's what's happening today. By default, every single non-Muslim has some form of Muslim affiliation in this country today, compared to 20 years ago. And that's what they are getting more and more worried about. That everywhere that you go, there's Muslim affiliation. I faced it many times in my own life. Persons walked in, tattoos all across their arms, earrings, whatever, dressed in a manner you think, they're speaking to this individual. When they walk out the door, they go, Assalamu alaikum. Mouth drops. My mouth drops thinking, in my mind, in my heart, what am I thinking about this individual? But you know what? He's a Muslim. Or he knows about Islam. He understands about Islam. Or he wants to become a Muslim. And he knows. This is the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. More and more every single day. It's rising more and more that we find statistics of the amount of people. Even the Christians themselves have concluded that by a certain year, 2020, whatever, maybe there'll be more masajid and more of the churches will be closed down and shut down. Hardly anybody will go to church. People will be going where? To the masjid. It's a Christian country. It's a Christian country. People will be moving away and they're searching for spirituality. Who has that spirituality? Islam does. Islam has a spirituality. They've enjoyed all of the world they want to enjoy. Even the ayat inside Surah Al-Rum that we find. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that this is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he mentions يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. رَبْط بَيْنَ الْآيَاتِ وَالصُّورِ is a deep science. It's a deep science of why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala move from one verse to another verse, and what's the link between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then concludes that for the masses of non-Muslims, what will happen? يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. The only thing that they know is the external factors of this dunya. They know them precisely about their meetings, about infrastructure, about buildings, about this, about that. They'll be unique and accurate in everything that they do. Quran is praising them. But then the Quran says that, because sometimes we think that if we're so technocratic like them, then we'll be successful. Yes, it helps Islam. But it's not the solution. It's not the solution to think that if we become technocrats like them, it will create the stability of Islam. That's what much of the Muslim world, that's what it thinks about at the moment. That if they build something in space, let's build a 7-star hotel in space. If they build something in the ocean, let's dig it deeper in the ocean and do it. If they do this, let us do this. Let's watch New Year's Day. They celebrate New Year's Day. We're going to celebrate even more than the non-Muslim world. And then show off to the world. Look at us. For what purpose? Because you know why? It's showing goodness to people. What goodness? Israf. Wasting of wealth, wasting of time. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. Allah praises them and says that, for the akhirah, they're in a state of ghafla, heedlessness. They're lost. They are lost individuals. So why do we want to become lost individuals? I'm not saying don't chase after the dunya, but have an understanding that the dunya is just a bridge to come to the other side. Use it to come to the other side, use it for your benefit. Use it to benefit the Muslims. Imagine if rich Muslims today, if they use their wealth appropriately, there will be no poverty. You know, they say even the wealth of the world, it rests in the hands of 3 individuals. The 3 richest men in the world are richer than countries. 3 richest men in the world are richer than countries in this world put together. Is that equal sharing of wealth? But you know, we Muslims are equally like that as well. وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. You know, Qur'an is very dynamic. You know, we think taqwa is to dress like this, to do this. Qur'an has a very different approach. لَمْ تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. انظر إلى كلمات القرآن. The Qur'an says, لَمْ تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. You're never going to attain piety until you don't spend on the things that you love. The Qur'an mentions that bir is not to turn to the right, to the east, to the west, and to establish the prayer and give zakat. These are all good things. But real bir is to spend of your wealth upon the orphans, upon the masakin, upon the downtrodden individual. That's real taqwa. That's why even in the tafsir of لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ, inside the tafsir of Ibn Kathir that we find, one of the companions, he had a garden in Medina. And everyone knew the value of this garden. And everyone knew that even the Prophet ﷺ should drink from the stream of this garden. He said, when I heard this verse, you're not going to attain piety till you don't spend on the things that you love. He said the most beloved thing to me is this garden. And I'm going to give this garden away. Give this garden away for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows more, blesses more. There's one individual, this person had numerous properties based all upon riba. When he learned that riba was haram, and then people said to him, you just need to get rid of it all. He literally walked away from it all. Possibly a multi-millionaire walked away from it all. Some of the people that he was working with, they found it very, very strange. So one Italian company he used to work with, they said that, look, Mr. So-and-so, you spent so many years working with us, you know, and there wasn't a problem. Now, what's the issue? He goes, look, you know, I've learned my deen and all of it's based, my empire is based upon haram, and that's it, I walked away from it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the heart of this individual or this organization, said, you know, Mr. So-and-so, in all our life of working, you've been a very trustworthy, honest individual. Here's £500,000 to start your business again, once again. Al-imanu billah. Belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Non-Muslim company getting £500,000 to begin his business once again on halal. But we don't have that yaqeen. We don't have that. What do we think? That, you know, what's the debate every day? That's all I hear most of the time. I don't have a house. I need to buy a house. You know how many non-Muslims live rented? Ya Shaykh, darura, need. We're going to be masakin, no house to live, no this, that and the other. That's what we hear all day long, everybody, same thing. And most of the people on the property ladder, they use this fatwa. I guarantee you, 99.9% of the people have gone and done what? Got a remortgage, got another property, put it on rent, churning in the rent, churning in the money. Big empire, big business. I don't want to say that there are some masajid, they're based upon riba. They used to display their bank statements. They took a loan from the bank to buy the masjid. When people started asking questions, they had to then take it down and not show it anymore. How can you base a masjid on riba? You know the Quraysh, when they rebuilt the Kaaba, Quraysh, non-Muslims, they said make sure there's not a dime, not a coin of riba when we rebuild the Kaaba. That's Quraysh. Make sure not even one dime of usury interest is bought to build the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not one coin dare anyone bring it to build the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what do? We turn a blind eye. We turn a blind eye to many things. We shouldn't turn a blind eye. What is haram, we should advise people. And that's why wherever we go, sometimes people don't like it. People get very emotional. You know, people want to hear what they like about Islam. The Imam's role, when he gets like began a professional individual, when your doctor gives you advice, you don't say to the doctor, oh Dr. G, aapko kya pata? What do? You say, yes sir. When the Imam says something, Imam sahab, iski kya zarurat hai? Isn't it? That's what they say. Why do you need to talk about these things? Why do you need to talk about my business for if I'm selling haram? Why need you highlight to people Muslims got half license? Why need you highlight this to people for? Just leave it alone. Just read the salah quietly and go home. This is reality. I know I have many imams who are friends. They've been banned from their positions. They've been removed from their positions. Why? Because this is what our role is. This is what our task is. Our task is we're not on the payroll. People think that we pay you and that's it. No. Our payroll is with who? With Allah. Our payroll is with Allah. It's not with people. When your payroll comes worrying about the people, and that's when your weakness begins to appear. And likewise, as Muslims, as average Muslims, your payroll isn't with the people around you. Times will come in our life that part of Islam is tests. Part of Islam, there will be tests. You're offered a job to work in a bank for £60,000 a year. It's very tempting. What does your creed tell you? It's not just working in a normal environment. The Asasul Banuk, it's a riba. It's riba, finish. It's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't think that Islam will just change everything to suit your needs and your desires. You believe in Islam, you have to show that conviction. You have to live up to the challenges. You have to overcome those challenges to become a more devoted individual. So these are all challenges around us. Non-Muslims will make comments, non-Muslims will say this, will do this will happen, that will happen. Muslim families may say this, people may say this, people will do that. No, person shows good character, good behavior, good etiquette and perseveres. Person doesn't lose, as we began with, doesn't lose the focus. Because the bushra, the glad tidings is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in conclusion that we find that if we want to be those individuals who rectify, that don't worry about the world. فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ هَلْ ثُوِبَ الْكُفَّارُ مَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. Whatever this world takes place around you, look at the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that day, today, let non-Muslims, let people laugh, let them rejoice, make a mockery about certain things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ. On this day, let the believers laugh at the disbelieving people. عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ. They'll be on reclining sofas and couches looking down on the people. هَلْ ثُوِبَ الْكُفَّارُ مَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. Will not the disbelieving individuals given their reward, their due reward be given to them? And that's as the proverb says, whoever laughs last, laughs the longest. So let the world laugh today. But in the hereafter, it's not too far away. It's كَلَّمْحِ الْبَصَرِ. It's like the blinking of an eye. That's what it is. This world will come to an end. People will come to an end. Everything will come to an end. If you remain strong to your Islam and your faith, as soon as you enter into the grave, there'll be success, there'll be nur. Those individuals, even before they leave this dunya, what do you see upon them? The strangling, the taking out of their souls and the punishment. Look how many, may Allah forbid, non-Muslims, the way they leave this dunya. Even some people, they write that if a person gets burned, it's instant. It's not instant. Because you can't see how much that torture could be. You may see it instantly, but that person will be being tortured. And likewise inside the grave as well, when it talks about Fir'aun, that inside the grave, they will be exposed to the fire. And then on the day of judgment, they will be exposed to an even greater torment. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the correct understanding of Islam, to strive and struggle to live true to Islam, to die in a state of being Muslims, in a state of submission and being raised up as being Muslims and being around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions and all the righteous people, the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada, the martyrs, the righteous individuals, Salihin, all those individuals who live true, that we're raised up and we're in that rank and in that path or in that collection of those individuals. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِجَمِيعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ.
Barakallahu feek. Jazakallah khair, Shaykh, for this great lecture and a great reminder. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your efforts and intentions, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you. Jazakallah khair. We come to the end of our today's winter conference here at Al-Huda. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial for all of us, inshaAllah, and make it a means to enter into Al-Jannah by applying this knowledge in our life and then pass it forward to our next generation. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Thank you for coming and to make this program and this conference successful. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feekum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.